Computer audio.
I can hear you now.
Okay, good. Thank you for your patience. I'm so sorry.
You're good. You're good. No worries.
Just give you an idea of what my life is like. It's 9:51 p.m. here.
Right.
I am still working in on my I have another whole other business. Plus I have three kids and my
Wow.
and my mother lives in our house.
That's a
So
lot of work for
it's like
sure.
I am constantly going, dude. I wake up at 8 a.m. and
Mhm.
I am working until like 10:30 or 11. I mean, honestly, and this week is absolutely nuts because I've got two shows, one in Denver and
Yeah.
another one in uh, San Diego. And I'm like, I'm on like a podcast a day, and I'm like, so I'm just trying to keep all the plates spinning. So I really am very grateful for your patience.
And
And
I'm really grateful to you for like giving me this time amidst your busy schedule to do this interview with me. So, Coach Jake, like the reason behind this interview is I'm a MMA and martial arts enthusiast, and I'm like doing BJJ like mostly nogi, but like I've been very familiar with like BJJ, its history and stuff. Like MMA, I'm like an avid fan of the UFC and stuff. But like the catch wrestling aspect of martial arts is, I think, kind of neglected, because like there are not very many schools as much as like the jiu-jitsu schools. So but catch wrestling cannot be neglected even in the highest of highest levels, because we saw what Josh Barnett did against like Dean Lister, and like even in the UFC we see a lot of like bulldog chokes, straight
leg locks. I mean,
leg
I'm
locks.
Sambo even credits catch wrestling with giving them leg locks that then they went and created their own leg locks from.
Right, right. And you also see like people like Carlos Newton, Sakuraba, who is known for like being the Gracie killer. Like,
Yeah.
no disrespect to the Gracies, they were like the game
No, they're
changers.
amazing. They're amazing. We wouldn't have look, we wouldn't even be talking right now if it wasn't for Gracie Jiu Jitsu because they started the UFC. They started the UFC as a promotional platform from which to showcase this thing that they loved, which was Gracie Jiu Jitsu. And they did an amazing job. They did an amazing job, and it's grown into this like, what, $4 billion. I don't know what the latest valuations are, what, the
Of the UFC.
yeah, I don't know the even the stock price or care because I don't own any stock in the UFC.
Right.
But that said, let's say it's a $4 billion business that I nobody would give a shit about catch wrestling if it wasn't for the UFC driving
Right.
an interest in submission grappling.
Right.
And but what's interesting is that traditionally in the 20th century, that narrative of submission grappling was carried through professional wrestling. Both the work or the fake or the predetermined outcome sports entertainment kind of pro wrestling, as well as the pro wrestling that preceded it that was truly competitive. So what's interesting is that had run its course, and the real shooters in professional wrestling were no longer in the US, they were in Japan. Karl Gotch went to Japan because he got blacklisted for beating up Buddy Rogers in the dressing room. And like they got the sheriff involved. They were going to get him like, what's it called when you're not a citizen of the country? Like, like kick you out of the country and shit because he was,
Uh,
from
Like
Belgium.
a fugitive?
No, no, no.
No, sorry.
Like,
My
like,
bad.
like they would revoke his green card or whatever. I don't know what they used
Right.
to, but
Right.
like you have to go back to Belgium. Like he can't work in the United States anymore. Like they really messed with Carl for trying to change that narrative back
Right.
to grappling. So he went to Japan where he was very welcomed there because Japan is a warlike culture. They, you know,
It's
like
like
they
the
picked
hub of martial arts.
they picked up nonviolent sports from us. Before that, they were like karate, judo, jujitsu. Like, I mean, every different way to kill somebody, they're figuring it out.
Right.
Ninjas, and samurai, and like that's a warlike people, and
Right.
and they're very sophisticated. And when that knowledge was brought over, this weird catch wrestling insular knowledge that was just known amongst catch wrestlers was brought over to Japan, man, you know, that's a country that, you know, really like in the 80s gave us electronics. Like these are people that can really fine tune and really improve things.
Right.
And, you know, you have like genius level guys like Carl Gotch and Billy Robinson spending time in Japan training these guys. You're right. There is nowhere near the same size, but that is because we didn't have a UFC to promote catch wrestling.
Exactly. And also that's the reason I'm having this interview, because like it's just because it's not being spoken, it doesn't mean that it's something that has to be neglected, because time and time again, like people like Sakuraba was known to be the greatest at their own game. So, and he also proved that, like, you know, jiu-jitsu wasn't the only grappling art in the town.
Yeah, what did he say? What did he say in after Ultimate Japan?
Come again, I'm sorry?
What did Sakuraba say, which I'm just supports your argument here, after the Ultimate Fighting, Ultimate Japan, which is like the first tournament they did in Japan, Sakuraba, that's where he beat Conan Severia. That was the first time we saw, in 1997, we saw Sakuraba. He only fought one guy in the UFC, and yet Sakuraba is in the Hall of Fame for the UFC. There's guys that fought fight after fight.
I think it was like twice, right? It was a rematch.
Hall of Fame. I mean, look at somebody like Frank Shamrock, who is also, in my opinion, a catch wrestler.
Right.
Totally like blacklisted out of the Hall of Fame. So, I mean, it's just difficult, man, because I understand it, man. They love jiu-jitsu. That's their thing. They don't want to buy the pitch of this catch wrestling thing, especially when it really is an interesting, very competitive product with them. In fact, you know, I would say that for every one competent catch wrestler out there, there's probably 5,000 to 10,000 competent jiu-jitsu guys. We're just dwarfed. Yet, like you said, we show up on these stages despite, like, against every odd. Like, I'm a statistician by training. The odds of guys like Josh Barnett just plowing through everybody and not knowing any jiu-jitsu other than wrestling against it, you know, that harkens back. And I dare say this, but this harkens back to Maeda, right? Who taught the Gracies.
Exactly.
But Maeda was honing his craft on the catch wrestling circuits.
Right. And it was like Helio Gracie who kind of modified it according to his stature, because like he was a small guy and he couldn't like afford to use that much strength and conditioning. So I think that's how jiu-jitsu was born. Like he just refined it.
Yeah, but think for a moment. If you think historically, the catch wrestling in the 20th century was huge.
Right.
And sometimes every once in a while they fight an outstanding jiu-jitsu guy.
Right.
Like Maeda.
Right.
Now it's changed. It's just switched.
Right.
Catch wrestling doesn't rule the world anymore at all. That hate is gone, and now jiu-jitsu, because of the UFC, has kind of taken over the mindset.
Right.
And yet now it's like the two are tied in this like orbit that just time changes things a little bit, you know, but they're co-evolving at the same time. Like, you know, a lot of my guys that are under the coaching catch program that I do, I have some really outstanding athletes in there. You guys should check out some of the coaching staff that we got. They're amazing. They like to call what they're doing now, because they really do take catch seriously. And these are high level guys, but they're like calling it hybrid grappling, because merging it with, they're taking the catch wrestling strategies and techniques and merging it with the jiu-jitsu techniques and strategies. And honestly, that's what I see happening with 10 Planet Jiu-Jitsu. Same thing happening with the Danaher Death Squad. Like Danaher's talking about pins all of a sudden. Like nobody used the word man and catch. Like, or I mean in jiu-jitsu, that's like a catch thing. Or, you know, fuck it, try a leg lock. You know, like why would you ignore 50% of the body? Well, it's interesting because catch has been ignoring 0% of the body in no holds barred matches. So it's just they're just in this fucking orbit, man. But I think in a historical context a lot of times, you know, because not only do I try to know the techniques and create the competitions and do all the things that I do for catch, I'm very much in the history of it, you know, like it gives a bigger context to things.
Right. And also, speaking of which, like you said, Dean Lister kind of, brought into jiu-jitsu the idea of like, incorporating leg locks. Why would you ignore the 50% of the human body?
Right.
But yeah, but I would say, catch wrestling had already, started its influence on jiu-jitsu back in the Hicks and Gracie days when there was a story. I don't know how true it is. That's why I'm like asking people like you who know better. So Hicks and Gracie apparently incorporated a lot of leg locks. Of course, it's not the level it is at today, but like from Eric Paulson's videotapes, and that's how like a lot of leg locks came into jiu-jitsu.
I've heard that as well. Yeah, I've heard that. Like, yeah, it's interesting, man, because there are these great dudes like Eric Paulson, like Gene LaBelle. I mean, those
Right.
guys to me are very much a similar kind of archetype of person. Just this enormous amount of information and knowledge on a subject, but they really are able to apply it in a cross-disciplinary way. Like,
Right.
I mean, Eric is very bright, man. Like, he's been so far ahead for so long,
Right.
and the game is just starting to catch up to him, which is great because hopefully that means he'll have a good retirement.
Right. Right. And also, that's the reason I'm doing this interview, because if you see my channel, it's
Although I'll say this, sorry to interrupt.
yeah,
I
yeah.
doubt Eric. Eric is like how Billy was and Carl and all of us that get by luck. I guarantee you he'll never retire because he loves it.
He loves it. Yes,
He
he's
loves
like
it.
passionate about this. I don't think his life has a meaning without like doing martial arts. You know what I
That's his
mean?
purpose. That's his
That's
purpose,
his
man.
purpose. I think
Yep.
I believe that's the reason he was put on this planet. And also,
And by the way, that's how I feel about catch wrestling. That's
right,
why I don't bother with anything else. That's all I'm interested in.
right, right. And also, that's the reason I'm making this interview, because like my channel, if you see, it's like I'm just making it not for like to be showy or like to have followers. I have very limited people that view my channel because of the content that I put, but I'm just creating a library of information for martial arts. So I'm just interviewing every people that know what they are talking about in terms of their own discipline. So for people, the reason why I'm
And I'm taking
interviewing.
this shit serious. I'll tell you that, man. I mean, I've done so much fucking work, dude. I couldn't even tell you. I couldn't even, dude. I got my master's in financial math. I couldn't tell you the number of hours of true, like, deliberate effort I put into this shit.
Right, right. And that's why I just wanted to know a lot about like the history and the techniques and the mission and like the scope of catch wrestling, because for me personally, I'm not the expert that you are in catch wrestling, but what I believe is, I think it's a confluence of wrestling and jiu-jitsu. It's like a in between spot, because like it has the takedowns and also the submissions, like
Yeah, but that's catch's nature. Catch to me is truly about living in the moment.
right,
It's about like the now, and it's like what I mean is in terms
go
of
with the
like
flow.
yeah, in terms of the game, right? Like it's constantly evolving. Like, dude, techniques are changing and evolving, and that is the importance of keeping it competitive.
Hmm.
You know, and I think that like catch lives always in this weird flow state, this midway state, this like Vesica Pisces. If you had a Venn diagram with two
Right,
circles
right, right.
where they overlap, Vesica
The
Pisces.
intersection.
That's
Yeah.
what catch does, because you're right. It's like it's a halfway between amateur wrestling and jiu-jitsu for the modern grappling guy, like just who doesn't really know everything about it. Like
Exactly.
it's this nice merger. But guess what? It's also a merger between pro wrestling and MMA.
Exactly.
That's
Yeah.
why you got Ronda Rousey and fucking Brock Lesnar and all those guys going back and forth,
Right. Right.
doubling the paycheck.
Right. Right. And even like the wrestlers, who are like very much into like hardcore wrestling, and who cannot like adapt to jiu-jitsu, they have their own staple submissions that they use. For example, Ben Askren, he goes for the bulldog choke, since like he doesn't believe in like putting the hooks in, taking the back and putting the hooks in, and going for the uh, you know uh, traditional rear naked choke.
You know why that is? because his wrestling sensibility tells him that when he puts in both hooks,
Mm-hmm.
as in jiu-jitsu,
Mm-hmm.
you cut off a lot of mobility. And
Right.
this is actually, to me, in catch wrestling, this is something known as a side ride, where you just put in one hook.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
That's been recently rediscovered
Mm-hmm.
as the truck in
Eddie Bravo. His
Superior,
planet.
because
Yeah.
the move that Eddie became famous for was what?
The rubber guard.
The twister.
The Twister. Yeah. Twister.
That's where he
It's a
started.
restless guillotine. Yeah.
Yes, a catch wrestling move that is a pin and a submission,
Right.
interestingly enough.
Right.
So, you know, catch lives in this like transition place. Like it's the weirdest, it's a fascinating sport because there's so many, it's got its foot in pro wrestling, you know what I mean? It's got its foot in like a little bit of vaudeville. It's
Right.
definitely a betting sport. There's like, you know, it's an interesting, to me, it's absolutely fascinating, man.
To me, like being a martial arts observer and a practitioner, like I thought like it would be a sin if I don't like incorporate any catch wrestling content in my channel, because like it is very important, though it is neglected, it's very unsung, and there are a lot of things that you can learn from catch. I'm not saying like, okay, just do catch, like do everything, but do not ignore catch. So like could you tell me the origins and like the how it like I mean like flowed between the countries and stuff, because like we all know how the whole history of jiu-jitsu because of the UFC, the Gracies and stuff. But also I think catch wrestling like traces back to people like Jigoro Kano, if I'm not wrong. So like you'd be the best person to ask. So can you just tell me the roots and the history of catch wrestling and its
So
origins?
yeah, it's pretty fascinating. And the problem, okay, so I'm like, again, you know, I'm an analytical person,
Right.
really. And
Right.
but I'm pretty creative, but like I'm analytical. And so when you look at just history in general as a theory of just knowledge, as a
Mm-hmm.
part of epistemology, like in philosophy, you know, how we know what we know kind of questions,
Mm-hmm.
it gets hard, man. It's been actually better as technology's improved because we actually have fucking pictures or we have
Right.
video. Like it's like now, of course, you know, with CGI and like deep fakes, we can manipulate that. So maybe that some of the veracity or the truthiness that was in the technologies maybe escaping us now, right? But when you go before technology, man, boy, all you got is what somebody wrote down, and
Exactly.
then you got to cross check why that guy wrote that. You got to really get deep to get even a general idea as you start going back. And so catch, you know, has been documented for a long time, as long as the technologies existed. And
Wow.
so um, it was very difficult to go back beyond that as an amateur historian. Like I just, you know, like we were talking before the call started, you know, I mean, I run a business, I got 3 kids. Um, I actually run like 2 businesses in addition to the wrestling business.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've got a very busy life. I like take care of my mother and I have all this other stuff that I'm very, very busy with. I mean, putting on shows and you know
Right.
what I mean?
Right.
Well, anyway, I got too off the beat, but
Right.
um, the thing is catch wrestling has been very much documented, but as you go back further, it gets really harder to like kind of make sense of the catch wrestling world. It's like, and there's a great book. The guy's name is Ruslan Pashayev, and he's actually, I think he's like some really high end like ballroom dance competitor or something. But he's fascinated with catch, and he's a better amateur historian than I am.
Story.
I
Okay.
did some good work, but this guy did some really amazing work.
Mm-hmm.
And there's actually a bunch of great historians out there. Like Mark Hewitt is a guy who immediately pops to mind. The guy is just amazing, especially with regards to the American catch wrestling history. He has a clipping for anything you ask him. I mean, he's so brilliant. But Ruslan did some really amazing work, and he was able to trace back kind of what actually created catch.
Okay.
And he has this book called the Story of Catch, and it's like from the 1870s when it really
Uh-huh.
was kind of first documented as its own thing, forward until about that era, like the formulation, and then when it really was like actually formalized and stuff. And he did amazing work. Long story short, you had it's in the North England where it first gets documented. It gets documented because the gentry are voting and betting on everything, from dog fighting to human fighting.
Right.
I mean, these are just truths of human nature that have happened in history, going back to Rome, and like these kind of things that are very human.
Like the pastime of people who work really hard,
Yeah, like boxing in a lower, like in some urban areas that are more economically blighted, like that kind of thing. Like the akaras in India, like that are the the kushti wrestlers
Kushti,
that are like monks basically.
Right.
So I guess the nutshell is that there was the Irish that were the poor in the North England. They were not the gentry. They were immigrants. They were subjects, kind of imperialized and conquered, whatever. They were the combatants. They were the athletes doing the work. They were the dog fighters, like. Then you had a huge influx of immigrants from Belgium. They were Flemish weavers.
Flemish, okay.
Yeah, the Flemish came in. Mm-hmm. And that's some of the terminology. They actually had a form of submissions that they were doing. Mm-hmm. Like kind of their own Aikido type of situation, their own way of wrestling for submissions.
Right.
That got married with this very hardcore Irish population that was doing more like rough and tumble fighting or collar and elbow wrestling. They were considered dirty at the time because they wrestle on the ground. Anybody who was to be seen in polite society or wealth or power, it was upper body wrestling, like more like Greco-Roman. And to get on the ground was dirty and low and trashy.
Right.
And illegal. It was actually illegal.
Right.
So you look at the challenges the UFC has had with the legality, like John McCain tried to come after him and call it human cockfighting and all this. They have parallels in catch wrestling as well, right? Like it's like an eternal process that humans go through, it seems, when there's a fight business or, So anyway, the combination of the Irish immigrants and this up and down fighting that they were doing, plus this addition of this submission-oriented mindset from the immigrants from the Flemish weavers that came in, that's when you started first having formalized catch-as-catch-can matches where the rules are written down by the betting class.
The okay.
In the North England, right?
Right.
Because the Irish can't write.
Right.
They're actually, it's illegal for the Irish to learn to read or write at this time, according to the British law, right? Like, so it was brutal for them. But this is the way they started making money, was that they were working in the coal mines, bent over, my grandpa did this work, man. He had black lung from it, bent over in the coal mines and, getting coal, right? He did it for the war effort during World War II. But
so he was in England?
No, he was here in the United States. There was a thing called the Colorado Conservation Corps or something like that. And
okay.
He was in the Army, but you could go do work for the war effort and get paid by the government kind of thing. And he got black lung from it. But the point is that, this coal mining shit is hard work. And these guys are doing it back in like the 1870s when life was hard.
Right.
Life was hard, man. Like, you're lucky if you had an egg in one day, one egg.
Right.
Toast maybe, and then you got to go work in the mines all day.
Right.
These are the way Billy used to tell me about it, like how poor it was, because he was closer to that time. These details that don't get carried over except maybe in literature.
Right.
Right. But a lot of people won't marry that into the knowledge base of wrestling. They don't think of it in terms of those kind of weird things like this, the class that they were so poor.
Right.
But so they start fighting each other for bets. Like, yeah, I bet I can kick your ass. Here's some rules so we can go to work tomorrow. Because, like a day off work could be life or death for your kids and shit. Like, it was like poor.
Right.
So eventually some of these guys got so good, these Irish guys, that they started like not having to work in the mines.
Right. They could just make a living out of. Yeah.
They could wrestle
Right.
and work the betting system and fucking start like making a living.
Right.
And so now you had the first professional wrestlers.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That's the
So-
pro wrestling, beginning of the pro wrestling, right?
Yeah,
Like-
yeah, and it's for side bets because it's competitive, right? It's like how you
Right.
bet on UFC and shit. I mean, it's way more sophisticated the betting now.
Right.
And proof, you know, I mean, they got the government involved to make sure that there's
Right.
no hanky panky or anything.
Right.
Well, that wasn't happening back then, though.
The
that's
Vegas odds. Yeah. Yeah.
So you would have, because the mafia would get involved because there's betting and bookies
Yeah.
and stuff. So now you have like that influence saying, no, you better throw this fucking fight because I got money. You know what I mean? Like, and that's like a mafia boss or something, you know, telling you how it's got to go. So boxing was under the same pressures at the
Right.
time in the States.
Right.
But they took a different business model, right?
Right.
So they started doing their works or they're fixing fights more so through booking.
Right.
Building a guy up and having him fight chumps to make
Right.
him look good, right?
So that they can increase his you know, his value. Yeah.
But then wrestling went the other way.
Right.
Wrestling said, hey, man, Frank Gotch, who is a big timer, you know, one of the biggest stars ever, if not the biggest star produced
Mhm.
by Gotch Wrestling. Like, he was like the Rock of the day. Like, this is a huge level athlete
Mhm.
in terms of exposure. And he started making money in vaudeville. You know, like the entertainment circuit, you know, like comedy and stuff
Okay.
like
Okay.
you know, it was more like the touring, almost carnivals, like how the entertainment system used back, you know,
Mhm.
entertainment, the people made a living in entertainment. They were like circuses and
Like
carnivals.
circus. You're right. Just
And they
like
have-
touring all over the country.
Yeah, and they'd have different attractions, wrestling being one of them.
Okay.
And then, so you start getting all these like theatrical people getting involved. And then the carnival wrestling is interesting because a lot of times they'd have either fake fights or real fights and they didn't know, and they had to be able to do both.
Right.
Because they'd go into a mining town. And like, I remember, dude, I started doing Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. I took my first private with Pedro Sauer in 94.
Wow. Okay.
We flew in-
Utah?
he was living in Utah, and we fly him down to Boulder Karate, where
Wow.
we do seminars and privates and bring these guys in because there was no jiu-jitsu anywhere at this time. Like UFC just happened.
Right.
So like, I can't remember where I was going with all that. I got too far off track.
Right.
But you know, catch has always been like I said, it's like, it's just so interwoven into our culture in so many different ways. I mean, look at UFC has gotten huge, which I've shown Gracie Jiu-Jitsu started, but was a product of Maeda wrestling against catch wrestlers on the
Right.
pro wrestling circuits,
Right.
you know, and then you got WWE, which is straight theatrical catch wrestling. You know, it's like
Right.
watching a John Wick movie. I see one of these guys like Ricochet, or these guys do a crazy fucking move and it's live. So it's very much got that circus performer, you know, vibe to it, you know, that spectacle vibe.
Right.
That's an $8 billion company, man. Like,
Right.
these are big, like The Rock is the highest paid actor in the world, and he came out of wrestling. Like,
Right.
it's really deeply interwoven into the American sensibility.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's always going to be there. Like, it's just not, you know, the one thing we could say about this country, you could say all kinds of controversial things. But one thing I can say is that this country produces a lot of fucking entertainment,
Right.
a lot of
Right.
content, a lot of fucking content.
And business out of it.
And that's was at the start of the internet, which is probably going to be the way people learn for the rest of humanity
Right.
until some other crazy technology comes that we can't foresee.
Right.
In that is this fucking wrestling thing that was like, it's the craziest thing to me that nobody else really sees it this way. This is why I get so excited about it.
Right. Right. So
But I'm
yeah.
also fucking obsessed, And so it's like when you play the slug bug game or what, like you try to look for a red Volkswagen bug on the trip, then all of a sudden you start seeing a bunch of them because you're looking for it, so
Right.
I see catch wrestling everywhere.
Right. Right. Because like that's what your like mind, body, and soul is into. So you just
That
like
is
attract catch wherever it is. Right. Right.
Yeah, I've got the craziest luck with it, dude. And a lot of it I think just has to do with my obsession. Like, dude, I gotta be Billy Robinson's right hand for 7 years, dude.
Wow.
Like amazing. Like, holy shit.
Right.
Like Josh Barnett came into town to go down to Pueblo, Colorado for a seminar down there. And on the way, he's like, hey, like, I'm going to be in town. I'm like, let's do lunch. He's like, cool. We go. I've like connected in this fucking web of just fascinating shit, like, I love it, dude. But, I think it is because I am really obsessed with it. I mean, dude, I'm putting on 2 shows. This Friday, I'm putting on a show in Denver, and then I'm flying to go help put on a King of Catch Wrestling tournament, the tournament system that I started in 2007.
Right.
Which it was like another lucky thing. Carl Gotch actually helped me write the rules. I was writing letters to him at the time, and I'm like, dude, Carl, and talking to him on the phone. And one of the letters, I was like, dude, this is what I'm working on. I want to bring back competitive catch wrestling. Can you look at the rules? And he made some tweaks, and then I made some executive decisions on some things that he wanted that I was like, no, that's not relevant today. Right. What's relevant is the UFC.
Right. Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So he said the only choke that could be in the King of Catch rules was a sleeper. And I'm like, dude, you're going to cut off all the jiu-jitsu guys that like a guillotine or a front headlock choke or a darce or something like that. Like, you don't
make it more appealing.
We want to be inclusive, man. And there's precedent because the American style, a lot of times things were contested with no holds barred or variations in the rules. Like you could bar the strangle sometimes and not do it the other time. And so, that's more my perspective, probably as an American.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like I probably have that somehow fed to me that I prefer that at some level, but I do. I mean, I like that. And I think it's good because it keeps it relevant in the world right now when interest in what I do and in what I'm obsessed with, all interest outside of my own self-generated interest, but anybody else's interest 99 times out of 10 is because of the UFC.
Right.
Because people are into this idea of real fights.
Right. So whatever they learn, they're gonna like relate that in terms of like what the UFC does and stuff. So they're just gonna like, hey, how does this gonna work in MMA? Like, trust me, a lot of people don't even know like there's a word called MMA. They just say UFC. I want to learn some UFC. Dude, it's mixed martial arts. Like UFC is just So you're right, like about the obsession like with the
there are people that are interested into it from actually the pro wrestling side though too.
Right.
Because there are
but
guys,
like when we were kids, like in India, it was the WWE. Everybody was back then. It was like the WWF, and like the choke slam and all those like crazy.
Yeah, but how crazy is that brand is in India, and that you knew that brand, and I knew that brand, and it was crazy for both of us.
Right.
Like WWE is on another level. Like they're on another level in terms of business and experience and institutional knowledge of like what actually sells.
Right.
But sometimes not everybody can be Google as a company. They can't be the immovable giant.
Right.
Sometimes not everybody can be Amazon.com.
Right.
But you can be pretty fucking far up there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so
you could be the best version of yourself.
Well, and
up there.
It's weird because this is really what my vision is right now to keep it relevant. And that is that Vesica Pisces, that cross breed between the pro wrestling fan and the MMA fan, because I know that there are those people that are both. They're not as big as either one circle.
Right.
But I really feel that overlap is owned by catch wrestling. I really that. And so what I find ironic is, to me, is that nobody is thinking of doing these things like on a big scale, like, because I understand how big shit can get. Like, I understand I have a master's in financial math. I worked in investment and mortgage banking, the head of like, you know, did a lot of shit, dude, like with derivatives, statistics, like I
Right.
understand
Right.
numbers. And I believe, honestly, that's why I'm part of it. I'm so obsessed with this, is I feel like this is like a gold mine. It's just not tapped. I just don't, I think someday, and this is what I've been on the hunt for. I mean, you can find interviews with me back like in 2008 talking about this, trying to find an investor or a backer who sees the same vision.
Right.
Because I really think there's money to be made there. I've been able to make a living for like 20 years, not solely off it. I do have other businesses, but I mean, it's been a profitable business, and I have not done anything other than just really pursue my dreams and my own research and being able to train firsthand with crazy guys like
Billy Robinson.
Carl,
Gosh, yeah.
Cardinal, like, and really try to absorb it up like a nerd, like.
Have you trained with Gene Libel?
Yeah, I went to Gene's. Well,
He's
it
a
was
rough guy for sure.
go kart school, but this was probably 2004. I went there for like 6 months.
Okay.
I moved back to LA, and the first place I hit was because I was moving from San Francisco and down into LA, and like the transition place I moved into was called the Farama Hotel. It was kind of this nasty, seedy hotel, but you could rent rooms cheap for like a month. You know what I mean? So I moved in there, but it's like where everybody who's first moving to LA moves in, and it's a little rough. But right next door, it's in a nice part of town, Marina Del Rey.
Yeah, I've seen the Furama hotels when I was in like Singapore. It's over there too. Yeah.
It's cheap. But
Right.
anyway, right next door to it was Dan Inosanto's gym.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I went in looking for Eric Paulson. This was 2003, I think, about, or 2003 probably. And yeah, I remember going into Inosanto's place, but it was always this guy named Mike from Australia that was also a Shudo guy. I can't remember his last name. He was always there, but Eric was never there because he was always touring. He's always been really plugged into the Jeet Kune Do like seminar circuit. Like he's just been on that forever, and he's just killing it. I mean, I think he's like the de facto like guy. Like
I think he was with Danny Inosanto and like Yuri Nakamura at that time, right? Like doing all the Shudo stuff.
So. Yeah, I think Yuri was at the Marina Del Rey studio, I think. Anyway, so I was there for a little while, and I've always just jumped around. And I was doing pro wrestling a lot at the time too. So I was getting booked. I got booked on the Warped Tour in 2001 and got to tour the entire United States. I wrestled Vampiro in the Sky Dome, and they had like WWE had their reality show Tough Enough, which was like the first season they ever did anything like that. And they had like 5,000 applicants, and 250 of us got chosen to go and audition. I didn't make the show. It would have changed my life. I'm glad it didn't, because I ended up learning that I didn't really like the touring schedule. When I did that Warped Tour, man, I just was like, dude, I'm kind of a homebody. Like, I want my books. I want my bathroom. I want my bed. I want to be able to go and do stuff. And like, I like being the guy that always goes to the same bar. Now I'm in a different city every day, and it's like, oh man, it's just
not my thing.
I didn't like it. And so I'm just like, so 2003, I started my own club for catch wrestling, because I'm like, this is what I want to do. I don't want to do jiu-jitsu anymore. I don't want to do just submission grappling. Like, I'm interested in this. I'm going to try to just fucking grow this, and do practice with pins as well as submissions, and just see what happens. And during that time, I was still pretty much actively wrestling. I ended up getting a carotid dissection from chokes, and so I only have one carotid. Yeah. So I'm definitely like on no more grappling for me, unfortunately. And I did it. the best guess that the doctors can say is it was 2008 because I was having like mini strokes, and that's like a thing that happens with something like that. And yeah, anyway, I don't know. No, that's that's neither here nor there. But so you know, when you start coaching other people, because they're beginners and they you know, your skills degrade when you're used to wrestling guys that are really good, and then you just start your own club, your skills start to like degrade. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
So one of the things that's important, I think, is the coaches need to be going to other gyms and keeping
Cross train.
their own liveness. So they're sensitive to things like timing and, you know, subtleties that
Okay.
need to be incorporated, you know?
Yeah.
And
To
anyway,
train with
so
guys who are the same level. That's what you mean, right? To just like
Yeah,
iron
yeah, so-
sharpens iron kind of thing.
yeah, so when I started my gym or my club, it was at the Santa Monica High School. It was actually Mark Schultz who helped me get there. You know, the guy who cradled Hickson.
Hicks and Gracie for 20 minutes. Like,
20
yeah.
minutes.
That's one of the questions that I had for you. Like, you know, I think this was in Santa Monica. Oh, no. This was like in Utah at Pedro Sauer's school where like Hickson and him had like a, you know, I won't say altercation. Like they just had a, like an
A
argument.
match. It was a
Hey,
challenge match. It was a
challenge
challenge match.
match.
Hickson
Yeah.
called up Mark and said, "Hey, you want to fight?" and show up. And Mark is a crazy man, you know, so he's like, "Okay." And
It's so
but, you know,
fascinating.
the thing is that you know, for years we know what the traditional narrative, you know, was of that, and it's cool, it's fine, because he did win the submission. Hickson did, but you know, the fact that he was held in a half hour for a cradle was
Right.
is, I think, is relevant a relevant point that was excluded, you know, kind of in the popular narrative, and anyway, what I find interesting is about Mark is that, you know, he took that defeat and he went and started. That's where he
Learning.
started jiu-jitsu, was with Pedro Sauer.
Mhm.
I have a lot of respect for Pedro Sauer. I really like that guy a lot. I don't know him that well, but he was the first guy I ever did any grappling with. I mean, I was like helpless, baby. You know, he was just toying with me. He was 94. I didn't know what I was
Right.
doing, but he was really a great guy. I then went after I moved from Boulder. I moved and trained with Carly Gracie in San Francisco for a little while, and then Half opened his school in the Mission, and Kurt Osiander was training over there, and I went there for a couple months. And so I always had my own club, but I would go to these other clubs to try to just fucking see where I was at,
Were you
see
doing the
what was
gi?
relevant, see what was new. And Gene LaBelle's was one of those. I went, I think in 2003, I was there for like, I don't know, 7, 8 months.
Uh-huh.
Some of the old time guys like Pacific Ocean. Carl wasn't there because he was blowing up in the UFC, so he wasn't there. But I wrestled Go-Court one time, and this is
I was
before
about to ask that.
this is before I ever learned anything from Billy. I think it would have, you know, I wouldn't have been as bad as I was because Billy's really changed fucking like the way I think about things radically, especially as a grappler. And I think that's maybe some of the reason we're talking, right? Because you saw my DVD on or my instructional on BJJ
Fanatics, yeah.
And that's basically a lot of the techniques that I was able to glean from Billy and pass on. Everybody else is going to have a different perspective on Billy's information that he wanted.
Yeah.
But this is my way to show the interconnectedness, to show the complexity of the system, that it is an actual orthodox system. It's not just a jumble of crazy submission before position bullshit, that there's a logic to what Sakuraba did.
Right.
You know, there's an actual structure. And that I know Sakuraba, his embodiment and understanding of it is him painting on the canvas of Pride, the mat.
Right.
You could see what he was able to do with the concepts, or a Josh Barnett.
He the one that structured all the pedagogy?
Because Billy was an incredible, not just a great athlete and wrestler, he was a fucking genius coach. He was a genius coach. When he could no longer even do anything, he couldn't even barely get on the mat, and he could make you a better wrestler, like radically better, like in a day or two. It was the fucking craziest thing I've ever seen.
Right, right. And also people like I have watched people like Walt Bayliss and other people like way back then when like, huh?
Another great Utah guy.
Yeah, great Utica. And so were these the people that kind of structured catch wrestling's pedagogy, or was it like already existing from the likes of people like from the likes of Jean Lebel and like Ed the Strangler Lewis? So when did it start? Like at least in the American version of catch wrestling.
Well, so you have to remember, like 1870s is kind of really when it really starts congealing in the UK. But that's also about the time you have the potato famine.
Okay.
Okay. And that's a big reason why you have a lot of Irish in the north of England.
Irish, yeah.
Because they're like, shit, man, there ain't no food here. We got to get across the channel, get some food, you know?
Right.
Well, there was also a boat going the other way to the United States because Civil War was on. And you could be a citizen, man. You could be a citizen in the United States if you went and you fought in the war for the North. That was like some clever human resources trick by the U.S. government back in the day.
Right.
And they got a lot of Irish people over here. Now that mixes a little bit with the hillbillies and the fighting that they're doing, which is a little bit different, but not too much different because England is like in United States and England, they're like kind of flipped socially. Like the country people are in the north in England, and in the United States, the country people are in the south.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, what are we really saying? We're saying like not the rich folks.
Right.
We're saying more the labor class is in the south.
Right.
Lots of African, leftover slave.
Right.
Poor white people. And that's also kind of the similar, just that's just very broad. And I don't know, somebody smarter than me will probably say I'm wrong, but like, that's just how it is. Right. And so you had the Civil War happening, and the deal is there's like a lot of downtime. There's a lot, like 99% of the time, you're not fighting. You go look back at these like Civil War enactment things, like they plan strategic, it's like chess, and they're figuring shit out, and then they launch their fucking attack. And it's this big, like you got a wall of guys with guns walking forward, shit, like suicide shit, like crazy, right? But you have a lot of downtime. And the good thing about wrestling is that, man, you don't need a ball.
Right.
I don't need shoulder pads.
Right.
I don't need anything. I don't even need
just
fucking
your
shoes.
Limbs.
I don't even need shoes. I just need fucking some grass.
Right.
And some dude, and maybe another dude to take the money and make sure that everything's, like a ref.
Right.
And so wrestling was big, man. And wrestling's always been big in the United States, but not catch. It was always collar and elbow. That's what like Lincoln and Washington did. But, catch started right around that Civil War, getting big in America, just as it was getting big in England.
Right.
And what's interesting is in England, there's actually two strains of catch. There's the Northern catch, which in my mind led to kind of the UFC and WWE route. Then you have, and that's up like the Wigan, Bolton, Lancashire, Liverpool, like all that.
Northern.
But the South, like London, because it's getting so hot up north, they create their own and they call it catch wrestling. But it's much more like cosmopolitan. And this is what ends up becoming, and it comes like, there's more of a German influence as well. Anyway, but they still allow lower body wrestling. This becomes the Olympic wrestling that we see in the Olympics today. Amateur catch can, or freestyle wrestling.
Right.
So there's another kind of, pardon my language, mindfuck moment on how deeply embedded catch wrestling is in the collective consciousness. And people don't even have a fucking clue. They have no clue. To me, I really feel that catch wrestling is this just enormous blue ocean. And so this is why, like with the Shoot Pro Wrestling show I'm doing on Friday, I'm doing that in Denver. I'm straight up calling it pro wrestling, but also I'm saying this is real. There are real wins and losses here.
Right.
This like real competition. These guys don't know each other, or if they do know each other, they're actually trying to not lose and not embarrass themselves. They're trying to win.
Right. Right.
Like it's square. I
Right.
mean, unless they're off sneaking off, and who gives a shit? I mean, whatever. People can tell when it's fake,
Right. Right. Exactly.
especially nowadays.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Everybody is like smart enough to like, tell what's the real deal and like what's the
There's a lot of
fake
pressure
one
on
and
pro
stuff,
wrestling on it, dude. The pro wrestling you and I watched as kids, the one you were saying when it used to be WWF.
WWF. Yeah. That's fake as shit. Yeah.
Oh shit! And then you would go watch an episode of NXT, which is kind of the cutting edge pro wrestling show where the big money Bollywood is like got its darling with, they've made all this money on this cartoon dumb shit and they can have this to do a hardcore product, and it's good. It's actually pretty good. Now again, it's scripted, but man, it's like watching an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie from the 80s and watching a John Wick movie from the 2020s.
Right.
It's
Again, a
changed.
confluence. Yeah. Yeah.
It's changed.
Right.
You know? And so anyway, it's fascinating to me, catch wrestling, because it's so freaking like diverse as well, so there are a lot of guys that are interested in both MMA and professional wrestling, and a lot of those guys are interested in catch wrestling.
Right. And also, speaking of which, there arises a question, like if you see like people like Demetrius Johnson, um, Ben Askren, Carlos Newton, like the people who have proved at the highest of the highest levels, have just used catch or like pancration and like non-BJJ grappling arts. But like the BJJ people, who do the BJJ competitions or like who do great in MMA, they have this argument like, hey, catch lacks all these, complex movements and like the subtleties that you see in jiu-jitsu, and also the bottom game, like
Listen,
the
that
bar.
I don't think they're lying. I just think that's their understanding because they don't actually know, and that's okay. But if I don't know actually a subject, I try not to talk about it too much until I know about it, like actually know, by like doing my best to dig in, learn about the people, learn about the history, maybe do a competition and see what it's like. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I think for me, it's an easy argument to deflate because I can just point to so many counterexamples
Right.
because it's been documented, man. We got footage. I've got Submission Master by Yoshiaki Fujiwara, which is a grappling instructional, submission grappling instructional.
Mhm.
It's absolutely mind-blowing, produced in 1993, before the UFC ever happened.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a complete jiu-jitsu or a complete submission system that Fujiwara learned from Karl Gotch. And so, I mean, it's just like difficult because, obviously it's sometimes it's so much human nature to become faction, break into factions. Like
Right.
I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican, I'm a Patriots fan, I'm a fucking Marlins fan, I'm a fucking whatever. Okay. I mean, people tend to get factionalized like that. So, the reality of it is that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu has done tremendously well. I have amazing amount of respect for their gameness and doing all that kind of stuff. I have a tremendous amount of respect for Sambo. I think that's a great sport. I have a great respect for Judo. That's one of my favorites. I did that at the Boulder Y for a couple of years. There's all these great sports, but I do think that catch has something special. And I think people that are sleeping on it, they just don't know. And part of that's my fault because I've tried to put out everything, dude. I've
Right.
got 10 books, 3 DVDs, websites, seminars with guys like Billy Robinson that I used, dude, I've done everything I can to counter that argument. You know what I mean? And
Right.
they're just not reading my shit.
Right.
And I'm not mad at them.
Mhm.
I got
That's the
stuff.
understanding. That's what
Like
you
if somebody
try.
likes fucking strawberry ice cream, I'm not mad that they don't like Rocky Road or vanilla or whatever. It's like, okay, it's cool. I'm glad they got fucking 31 flavors or whatever, you know.
Right. So speaking of which, do you think the bottom game in BJJ is the unique aspect of the grappling art itself, or do you think it's like the turtling and like getting back aspect of catch makes you more kind of fight ready, because it's like always trying to like get back up to the feet? So what is your take on like both these grappling arts philosophies, being when it comes to like incorporating in MMA? Because like from in catch you have the body scissor, which is just like a strangle from the bottom, like which constricts the diaphragm, but the guard is like much more dynamic and like much more revolutionized.
So I think this is it. And this is where I think sometimes people say things like Catch says that you do a submission before a position. No, that's not the case. The case is that jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, loves one control position, and that is with the legs around the opponent. They love it. They love being on the bottom. They love being on the top. Like that's their jam. Until like Eddie Bravo started doing this like half guard shit, the truck and all.
Right.
I'm talking like the old guard of jiu-jitsu. They love that, man. They love both hooks in. You know what I mean? Like they love that control position of the body scissor. And because that's their obsession, they have gone down that fucking rabbit hole and figured out every goddamn permutation on the planet on how to use the body scissor. They are dangerous as shit with that control position. But the problem is a lot of people think that's the only control position. And we know, like judo, there's head and arm position, dude. That's a bitch of a place to be. Somebody knows how to do it.
The Kesa.
Look at Dean Lister, Josh Barnett. Josh Barnett can make that a really rough fucking place. It's a control position. What's a control position? To me, a control position is a place from which you set up your submissions. You have to have a control position before a submission.
Right.
But there are more than just the guard. So I mentioned head and arm, cross body. If you know how to really ride somebody, you can stick them to the mat. You're controlling them. And now I can set up submissions. Right? North, south.
Right.
Now we're starting to see all these different control positions now that have all these submissions that branch off. This is what catch wrestling does. Catch wrestling has maybe 15 different control positions. But because there's so many control positions, it's not like everybody's just picking one and focusing on it like jiu-jitsu did with the guard.
Right.
It's more of a distributed system, but not maybe as deep on each subject, but you've got a big fucking repertoire.
Right.
All of a sudden, it looks like you're pulling out submissions before you get a position. But if you think of every submission must be set up from the guard, then of course you think that this is getting a submission without getting a position. But I have a friend, Dave Patrone, who's one of our coaches, Scientific Wrestling, real proud of this guy, doing a lot of great thinking with using the cradle as a control position. Eddie Bravo has built a system about using one leg in as a control position, this truck.
Yeah.
Now there's a whole host of these in catch wrestling. That's in the submission instructional with BJJ Fanatics. I go over the control positions, and then I go over some submissions that you can get off of those control positions.
Right. So
somebody could take one of those control positions and get as obsessed as the Gracie family did on one control position. Guard. I did that with the Nelson. I said, okay, I'm going to show you how to do this. The Nelson is an incredible control position. Bouncers have been using it for hundreds, if not millions of years.
Right.
This is a great control.
And it's the favorite amongst the boys, even in like Indian schools. During the lunch break, boom, somebody grabs you from behind.
Your fucking arms in your head, and you're like, fuck. You're vulnerable.
Right.
It's an incredible control position. So I made a whole DVD saying, look, guys, here you go. So to me, like people that aren't looking deeply at this, I don't think are not looking deeply at this. And I'm not begrudging them. I just wish they would like think deeply about it before they make proclamations or, you know, and I'm trying to do everything I can to put work out there and let people know of other people doing work in this field.
Yeah, yeah.
That's just the truth, man.
But one another argument from there, from the jiu-jitsu people side is like we have everything and the guard. They say like, we have the north south in jiu-jitsu, we have the side control, we have more refined keisa gatame, and
I
the
mean, that's just
guard.
a sales pitch now. Now that's just a sales pitch. Like, hey, buy this, don't buy the Ferrari, buy the Lambo. Like it's just a sales pitch at that point. You either you like Lamborghinis or you like Ducatis. Like it's just, you know what I mean? Like it's
Right.
at a certain point, it doesn't get. You could try to make up a bunch of bullshit, but it ends up just being a sales pitch. And right now, jiu-jitsu is winning that sales pitch because the UFC. Like
UFC.
there is a jiu-jitsu place in almost every strip mall.
Right.
When I was 22 and hungry for this product, it wasn't anywhere. We had to fucking fly that shit in, like Uber Eats. That had to get put in, and we had to fly it back out, and we had all that extra charges and shit. This is before the internet.
Right. Right.
You know what I mean? Like 94. And now, and for me to see as an industry, as a guy who likes business and is interested in things of that nature, to see it as a business now become like a $4 billion thing just for the UFC.
Right.
I mean, if you were to value every jiu-jitsu school as like their own industry, I mean, that's an interesting statistic. I'm sure it's out there, but they're big, man. They're making a lot of money. It's putting food on the table for a lot of families.
Right. Right.
And, I have nothing but respect for that. That's amazing. That's amazing. And catch wrestling used to be there, and I still believe in it. And that doesn't mean because I like vanilla that nobody can sell or nobody can try to fucking pitch
Strawberry.
or get somebody else to like fucking praline and cream. Like, dude, run commercials. I don't give a shit. I'm gonna do the same thing.
Right.
But there is, I think, something to catch wrestling that people like. I mean, just aesthetically as a fight sport, like contested for real, not in katas and shit. I mean, that would be pro wrestling. It's almost like doing kata, like, you know what I mean? Like these preordained martial arts moves or whatever.
Right. The katas, yeah.
But I think there's something special like watching an athlete like Sakuraba move. And that comes from a wrestler's sensibility. And the wrestler's sensibility is built around the pin, about getting off your back, because who knows the reason. I've heard it said that, the reason why a pin was considered the win was, it was a way to incapacitate somebody that
to hold somebody,
without hurting
immobilize them.
Yeah, without hurting them, but you have complete control over them for a good count. Not 30 minutes like Hickson, like the 3 count is all they were asking.
Right.
But like in the animal kingdom, when an animal goes belly up, that's like submissive.
Right.
Like a dog or a cat or, a mouse or something. When they belly up, when they're against their own, that's like a submissive. Like that's like, okay, you win.
Right.
So, and beyond that, there's just this precedent in the pin as well. So the wrestler is going to tend to not want to have his back on the ground for a myriad of reasons.
But one question, like even John Danaher has like spoken about.
It's difficult. It's more difficult on a planet with gravity to fight uphill than downhill.
That's true. Even like John Danaher has like
military, general fighting, as broad as you can get. Gravity fucking matters.
Right. Even like John Danaher speaks a lot about like gravity, pins, and why a pin is considered so superior and stuff. But also beyond that point, if you see, if you consider the latest innovations by like Eddie Bravo and like the newer jiu-jitsu schools, even when you're pinned, you can like submit the opponent, like, with the buggy choke, the Venus flytrap, and all those submissions from weird ass positions where you think you're winning by just pinning the opponent, but like he can still catch you with some weird ass shit. So what
Yeah.
do you think? Like, do you think like catch has to be like kind of modified according to the improving concepts? Because like John Danaher, his jujitsu is like
Okay, let me start with this.
yeah.
Okay. I totally get what you're saying.
Hmm.
And any and all innovation in grappling sport, I am 100% in
Open
support.
to it. Okay.
Because to me, I don't buy into identity politics stuff so much.
Hmm.
You can, again, that's your fucking vanilla or strawberry ice cream. I don't like it. It doesn't sit right with me. To me, you can call yourself a catch wrestler. I call myself a catch wrestler because it just makes things simpler. But when it really boils down to it, catch wrestling is a set of rules that two people grapple under. They agree to grapple under a certain set of rules. And what I think distinguishes it generally from just submission grappling is the inclusion of the pin. But it's different.
Okay.
It's different from amateur wrestling because there is this idea of concession holds and giving up and
Yes.
submitting.
Submissions.
Yes. So
That's why I always
again,
believe the confluence.
that's like a Pisces. It's like catch lives in these transitions, you know.
The Venn diagram intersection.
Yeah, it's weird. It's a movie. It's like a movie. It's a dynamic object. It's a very it's fascinating to me if you can't tell.
And also, do you think the other grappling arts like jiu-jitsu have like incorporated a lot of techniques from catch without like giving them proper credit?
Oh, that happens. Yeah, I'm sure the catch has done it at some point, but a lot of times they'd call it like a Japanese necktie, or they give it like some name.
Peruvian necktie. Yeah.
But that's just maybe the difference in cultures, or I mean, I don't know. It could be annoying because when you've been studying the history and you've been seeing like a toe hold, or you've been seeing a wrestler's guillotine, and everybody's all fucking excited, and you're like, okay, yes, that's cool.
Right.
I totally get it. But it's not new. Like, and then you're the asshole. You're the guy at the party that ruins it. And it's like, dude, I don't know. Like, I could show you a picture of it from 1940. Like, I don't know what to tell you.
Right. Right.
So to me, I just wish people would just at least give a nod. I think Eddie Bravo has done that in a very, very awesome way.
Uh-huh.
He always gives credit. He's like, man, this was a wrestling move, and
Restless guillotine.
Yeah, I mean, he'll give catch wrestling a hard time because, yeah, we are the kid that's easy to pick on because, we're not the 900-pound gorilla. We're now dwindled down to nothing, man. Like it's bad,
Right.
Relatively speaking. So I am in no means, like, a lot of people want to pick a fight with fucking jiu-jitsu, and I'm like, dude, interest in jiu-jitsu is what's driving interest in catch. Period. It's just how it is. Now, pro wrestling is starting to see the value, but that's because I think UFC has put pressure on pro wrestling to improve its product. That's why it's no longer an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie and looks more like a John Wick movie. And that's again because of UFC pressure.
Right.
A promotion started by Gracie Jiu-Jitsu.
Right. Right.
So to me, in some ways, jiu-jitsu and catch are like yin and yang.
Exactly. That's what my next question was. Like, is
that's what
complementary to jiu-jitsu?
Hybrid grappling, dude. Because just get over it. Just credit, like, I'm a Western guy, so I like cite my sources and I try to give credit. You know what I mean? Like scientific wrestling,
Right.
Document, that's the vibe. I'm not saying anything superior. I don't want to get into those kind of arguments. I'm just saying that's my vibe. I'm going to try to document everything. And I think hybrid grappling is a real cool opportunity. I mean, that's what fucking Eric Paulson's done so well.
Right.
He has like a jiu-jitsu system that has all these catch finishes.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's hybrid grappling.
And also he trained under the Gracies and catch wrestling. So I think he has a fair understanding of like both the disciplines, and he knows how to like how do you say, like amalgamate like both into like one, like hybrid.
There's a number of guys out there like that. Again, the guy I mentioned earlier doing the cradle Universe.
Marshall.
Dave Petrone, he's
Oh,
one of our
Dave Petrone.
coaches.
Okay.
I see what he's doing with the cradle is kind of setting up a whole universe like how Eddie Bravo did with the side ride, like with the truck and setting up the twister and then setting, all these rubber guard things from which he built. Like Dave's doing some interesting stuff with the cradle. So there's guys out there that like Eric, but there's also other guys that nobody's heard of, or maybe very few people heard of, that are really interesting and doing fascinating stuff. And they really respect both sports because they're mining for data. They realize we're in the information age, and that a lot of these grappling contests today do not have pins. And if you want to make $1,000 on a weekend and go to like a fight to win or what, make some cash, that's the rule set, man. That's where the fight's at right now because that's where the money's at.
Right.
And the money's at that place because the Gracies started the UFC and did it well. They did
well.
Great promotion.
Really great job of like promoting their, system. Right. And also, do you think like jiu-jitsu is complementary to catch, like the yin and yang? So do you think like, you'll be a complete martial artist once you know both? Or do you think catch itself is like a perfect, a wholesome, grappling art? Because like, what do you think is the reason why Ken Shamrock lost to Royce Gracie? Did you think it was just him, like not representing catch properly?
I think it's because they weren't doing chokes. Remember, I told you Carl was like, oh, sleeper only. Like he comes from that more. He ended up becoming an American catch wrestler after, because he spent like 10 years or 12 years at Billy Riley's school, and then came to the United States, learned under guys like Ben Sherman and Frank Wolf, and he considered himself an American catch wrestler. But Shamrock comes from that. Ken comes from that line. And that might have been part of it, is that, they were not practicing as intensely on chokes as the jiu-jitsu guys.
Right.
And so that intense focus on one subject, the guard, and getting a rear naked choke makes them really fucking dangerous, right? Like what Bruce Lee say, if you're not the man that knows 1,000 kicks.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And that's my philosophy on wrestling. Like, it's not, I know a lot of holds. I know a lot of holds because I'm a teacher, and I want what might work for one guy may not work for another guy. So as I teach, I have different ways. Like there's a way Newton does calculus, there's a way Leibniz, and you can know ways because somebody might need to know it because they happen to come from Germany, or somebody else comes from a different place and they need to know it the Newtonian way, right? So like for me as a teacher and a coach and an information salesman, I've got to be able to deliver the best product. It's workable for as many people as possible, right?
Right.
But if I'm coaching an individual athlete, I'm going to look at what they're fucking good at.
Right.
And I'm not going to teach them anything else. I'm going to expand that. I'm going to teach, if you're good at a Nelson, I'm going to teach you 50 ways to get into it from every position. Because I know you can finish. I know you can close that hold. And you're only going to get better at it. So let's figure out how to get you there. That's my approach to it. But what's interesting is that I think is a very jiu-jitsu way of looking at things is hyper specialization.
It's like integrating and like isolation and integration, like isolating one part and like working, refining it, and like, adding it back to the whole game.
Getting way more data points.
Right.
On one phenomenon and becoming the expert, so, right. And catch is really broad, man, because it's been around a long time and there's a lot of different influences on it. Because then when it came to the United States, it had different influences. And then they start bringing in guys like Gama.
From India.
Yeah, he wrestled Zabisco. And I mean, like, you know what I mean? So like you're getting this influences. So to your question earlier, I think it's crucial that catch interacts with other grappling arts because it's what keeps it relevant.
Yes.
I'm not a believer in isolation.
Right.
I don't see a benefit to that. I see a benefit to adding as many influences as possible and putting them in a competitive environment and separating the wheat from the chaff.
Right, right. Also, like if you're preparing somebody for like an MMA match where he's like facing this jiu-jitsu brown belt or purple belt, he has to have a basic knowledge of what jiu-jitsu is all about and like what the attacks are and like how the attacks are gonna be set up and stuff so that he can defend better and stuff. So it's always
The fact is this: no system is complete.
yes.
The fact that you call it a system is separating it away from something else, meaning it's not complete.
Right.
Just period. Like it will. It's like Gödel's incompleteness theorem, right? It's just a system will never. It by definition, it just can't be complete.
Right. Right.
So what we have to look at, the way I like to really abstractly look at it is I just say, you have to look at the rule set you're fighting under.
Right.
And try to do your best to win.
Right.
What's interesting about catch, and I think Sakuraba in particular, is everybody bought the sales pitch, which is not a problem. But everybody bought the sales pitch that this was the fucking way. If you didn't do it this way, you're fucking retarded. And here comes this weird pro wrestler just fucking laying one down after another, spanking one in a fucking ring. Like mind fucking blowing at the time, like mind blowing to me.
Right. Right.
You know? So, I mean, it's interesting. I think this is what I like about MMA is that it has that spirit. Even though it was booked originally to showcase Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, in my opinion, it has allowed
everything, all kinds of rules,
everything to merge, and there's so much information. And so you could win a catch wrestling match with a move that's traditionally known as a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu move.
Right.
But you can win a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu match with a move that
catch
is
wrestling,
traditionally considered
like a bulldog choke.
Eddie Bravo, the twister.
Right.
Do you see? Like, I don't understand, other than maybe to promote a match, why there would be any animosity. Because both are symbiotic, in my opinion.
Right. Mutually dependent on each other, like, sharing.
They really are. I mean, then the history goes back together. So, do I know jiu-jitsu? I mean, I know it because it's relevant today. And so if I'm training somebody, I need to understand its strategy and try to figure out how to beat that. But that's like chess.
Right.
Strategies and ideas and things evolve given the latest kind of fad. Everything's central on the guard right now.
Right.
It's not always like that. And it won't always be like that.
Right. Right.
It's just how the world works.
Right. Right.
When you factor in time and human nature.
Yeah.
Definitely be different. I can tell you that.
Yeah. I can understand.
So I think to me on the grappling scene, I really just see everything as hybrid grappling now. Because I mean, I look at Danaher's guys.
Yeah.
They look like the Lions Den in the early 90s, man. They're all jacked up and in Speedos, like doing leg locks.
Right. Right.
It's so similar now with the no-gi. It's just high-level guard work.
Right. Right. And also, do you think catch wrestling is more for people that are strong and conditioned? Because, do you think like strength and conditioning is a prerequisite for catch wrestling? Because if you see the pioneers of the sport, like Billy Robinson, Ed the Strangler Lewis, Gene LeBell, and Josh Barnett, they're like physical specimens, like the huge people, strong and conditioned. But if you see on the other side, like Horace Gracie.
No, there's a whole, actually Billy would really take issue with this because the guys that he learned from, like Billy Riley and Billy Joyce, and there's other wrestlers like that are legendary, and when you really know the eras, like Wayno Katonen. These were all Horace Gracie built guys, lanky, noodly guys.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Billy used to say that like I had that look because I'm wiry, because I'm just lanky.
Okay.
So here's where you get it, because you have to understand, man. especially with wrestling, because wrestling is very much conscious of gravity, like using gravity.
Yeah.
It's very conscious of this. This is, to me, a huge difference in a lot of like the old guard jiu-jitsu mentality, is that it's very concerned with gravity. That's a huge tactical strategic thing. That's why the takedown's important. That's why pinning's important. That's why riding is important. It's staying on top is because of this notion of the strategic advantage of height and gravity, you know.
But being a small guy, don't you think like you would have more chances of being ending up on the bottom, like
yeah, but wait, you have to remember there's been weight classes most times.
Right.
And so they did this because they understood how much a heavyweight wrestler, every pound is another weapon.
Yes.
This is how you have to understand it. Like, if you've ever been cradled by a heavyweight, dude, you think you're going to die.
Yes.
Because it's so much weight. So they break up these classes into different weight classes. So there's been tremendous lightweight catch can man.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Incredible middleweights. John Pesek could kill probably anybody in any size. Middleweight guy, small guy.
What's his name though? I'm sorry, John Pesek?
Pesek, yeah. He's a Nebraska guy.
Wow. Okay.
So and Frank Gotch was not that big physically compared to some of the guys that he wrestled.
Right. Right.
Hackenschmidt definitely comes from that big bodybuilder pro wrestling look. Hackenschmidt, though. Mm-hmm. He's considered a Greco-Roman guy and a strength and conditioning guy. So, you know, I 100% agree with Carl, his famous adage that conditioning is your greatest hold.
Uh-huh.
Because I don't care who you are, but when you gas and the other guy doesn't gas, 9 times out of 10, that's when he's making his highlight reel. Because you can't reasonably respond because you just don't have the energy, because you're not conditioned. Conditioning also includes just being toughened up. You know, like when people first start grappling, they get bruises all over them. But then, you know, after a couple months, the same stuff doesn't bruise you. You're conditioned to it. So there's cardiovascular conditioning, there's physical conditioning, there's mental conditioning to be able to push yourself through pain. That normally, you know, like as you learn, you're like, oh, that's okay, I can live, you know.
Right.
So weight is really, I think, an interesting topic, but it's very strategically included in the catch wrestling game. That is something I think is specific to the wrestler mindset.
Yeah, I have seen a lot of concepts of like weight distribution and like how to place your weight on the right parts of the body where it like
judo is like this, judo is like that, sumo is like this.
Right. So one last question before I let you go. Can you just like, you know, like you can speak your heart out like about like catch wrestling, because like I might ask you some questions, but you know it might not like bring out everything within you, because like I don't know much about catch wrestling even to ask. So like, do you want it? I mean, like I would like you to end it with the technical differences between catch and jiu-jitsu, or what do you think is like the heart and soul of the technical aspect of catch? Like, what is so unique about catch and just technical?
Okay, well, I will do that. But first, a word from our sponsors, and that is the King of Catch Wrestling tournament this Sunday. So please, I hope you don't mind, but I got to pitch this. King of Catch Wrestling is a tournament, again, with rule set that I co-developed with Carl. It's been going since 2007. It's in San Diego on July 18th, 9:30. I think you got to be there for weigh-ins. And I mean, we got cash prizes, $100 for the champ of each division, $300 for what we're calling the catch of the day, which is, you know, the win of the day. And I think we also have $300 for the absolute, which is taking a guy who's a 10th planet, highest down. I think he said he was like 185 or something like that, or 190.
Okay.
Again, 300-pound Nick Kajia, who's a very experienced grappler and champion from the East Coast in the absolute. That's going to be on Sunday, but that's in San Diego. You can still register if you go to kinggcatchwrestling.com. Actually test it out. If you're in, you talk shit on catch, you love catch, you feel indifferent, I don't care. Just go and try it. Play it. See if you like it. See if you like it.
Yeah.
It's cheap, dude. We're like the cheapest tournament, and because catch is best of 3 falls, you're always guaranteed 2 matches, at least.
Can you just send me the link so that I can put that in the description
of
my channel? Really, and also I'll put that in Facebook. Yep.
Catchwrestling.com. And the other one is on Friday in Denver, where I live. I'm starting a concept, which is more like an invitational, although it's definitely more on the pro wrestling business model, except it is straight grappling. It's competitive. And it's called Shoot Pro Wrestling, because in the pro wrestling lingo, a shoot is a legit competitive match. And so we're doing that on Friday.
Okay.
I'm doing the first ever tag team catch wrestling match. So I have another one of my guys, Gil Olivas, who is just a real great grappler. He's been real serious about his catch knowledge, and he's down in Arizona in Glendale, just outside of Phoenix.
I'm from there.
Oh, okay. So he's coming up. He has a gym called Black Flag down there, and they do catch. Man, he loves catch. So he's coming up, and with his one of his students, a purple belt guy, Maverick. And so it's going to be Gil, all of us, and Maverick Calloway. They're going to be the tag team coming up. And then we got local Denver legend MMA guy named John Kronk, who's been around forever. Dude, this is where I get jealous, because my body didn't make it to, I think I was 38 or 36 when I was retired because of the
carotid problem,
the trauma to my.
Yeah.
So, but Kronk is like 53 or 54.
Wow.
And he's in there. And Gil is not just a badass catch wrestler. He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu as well. So this is a real guy.
Right.
And Kronk's getting in, who's a real guy. This is a guy who, like, if you look at him, look him up, like, he's been around forever doing bangers, dude. And then we got another guy who's a grappling champ, but he's a pro wrestler primarily, but he's entered grappling competitions and done very well. Joe Barton. So we're going to have Kronk and Barton tag team against all of us and Callaway. And it's going to be fun. There's like a 5-second interference span. So if you get tagged, let's say you're getting rear naked choked and you're about to lose, but your partner can tag you, he tags, there's a 5-second time, man, where you better let go of that fucking choke and defend, because this guy's going to come and get you.
That is so fascinating. Like a team sport.
You can sort of be double teamed, but you only got 5 seconds. That's not very much time.
Right.
But dude, I'm telling you, like, the guys, it's going to be great for a show.
Is it a live stream?
I'm thinking about doing a live stream. I think I probably will. I definitely will put the main event on the Scientific Wrestling Facebook page. I may do the whole show, but I'm going to be honest with you. It just depends how grateful I am that day, if we sell out, or, you know what I mean? So, right. But you'll definitely get the main event and probably another match for free on the Facebook stream. Just go over to Scientific Wrestling, follow it. I'll, be announcing it or whatever over there. But that's going to be nuts. But what is really cool to me is that in the gym, the guys love doing the tag team fucking grappling. Dude, they love it. Like, that's what they like to do. Like, they're play. Yeah, it's a fun game, dude. It's a fun game. So then we have, I have a guy, Jamie Nottingham, who's come to one of my camps that I did down in Orlando. Jamie Nottingham is like a professional grappler, just game as shit on all of these different, always trying to make money and winning and doing really well. He's going to be wrestling a badass from down south in Colorado here called Pueblo, who is, I think he's a purple belt as well. Juan Martinez, who is tough as hell. I mean, it's going to be under catch rules. So the ref is going to be like, keep moving. There's rope breaks, which totally keeps the action moving. I honestly believe, from an entertainment standpoint, catch wrestling, the reason it got so big, the reason why it started Olympic wrestling, the reason why it started WWE, the reason why it's in the grappling world.
It's so dynamic and like very action-packed.
Dude. It's entertainment. It sells tickets, and it's still a pure grappling sport.
Also, it's
So
like very action packed, like, all the crazy moves and stuff.
always
Like,
moving. The rope breaks, dude. There's no chance for like they got to come to scratch and get right at it, dude. It's like rope break, go. It's like boxing in that regard, but like grappling because it's just go, 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 go. That's where the conditioning comes in and is important. Big muscles
right,
and stuff. I mean, strategically, yeah, maybe you're really good at getting a double wrist lock or you get the double wrist lock over the other guy just because you're stronger. But I mean, these are the same arguments you could ask to Gordon Ryan, dude. That guy's jacked.
right, right.
He's fucking big too.
Yeah, and he's strong.
So like Serena Williams, man, she's doing strength and conditioning. So it is crucial. I don't even know that that's all that controversial at the high levels. At the high levels, you're looking for millimeters of a different.
Exactly, because everybody's equally skilled, and it's just those like little edges that will like make you win.
Sprinters. I mean, sprinters are doing deadlifts and shit, you know what I mean? Like you've got to do things at that level that will make a difference. So in that regard, to answer that question very late, yeah, I think it's important, but I don't think big body builder muscles or a WWE body in particular is the body to go after unless you want to be in the WWE. But hey, man, that's a good gamble, dude. You could be the next Rock,
Right.
That's not a bad place to be.
Right. So like you just want to like talk about like the scientific aspects, like
Okay.
the gravity and the
Enough commercial. Okay, so here's the thing. I think to me the appeal in the modern era, the reason why catch wrestling is relevant today is because it has like a very deep well of information that has been borne out in the lab or on the mats or whatever you want to call it, but just through iterations and iterations and iterations and iterations and different minds applying their problem solving to these iterations. And there's a lot of deep, really solid information in catch wrestling. Okay. That's the technical, more, information age driven pitch. I think that catch wrestling from another angle is that, like we've been talking, I think it's super entertaining. I think it's a great sport.
right.
I mean, I really do. And you could get into sports science, but that's really boring.
Right.
The exciting part is the actual sport itself. And so I think it's an exciting sport. But I think it's got a deep well of knowledge. And so in today's world where the UFC is super duper influential, it's moving the WWE needle to change what the product looks like.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's changed boxing, like it's changing the world. And in that sense, catch wrestling is kind of inextricably tied to jiu-jitsu.
Right.
Because we're maybe like the older brother that made it tough.
Right. Right.
And sometimes now, we're the same age and, sometimes the younger brother's the one that makes all the money.
Right. Right.
Doesn't mean the older brother still didn't beat the shit out of you.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, but that doesn't mean you didn't get your ass kicked either if you're the older brother. I mean, there's some younger brothers that beat the fucking shit out of their older siblings too. But you get what I'm saying? Like that's maybe.
But that doesn't mean you ain't shit. Like you have also proven your value in terms of being an inevitable component of MMA, as many people have proved time and time again.
I think the two are intertwined, man.
Should be.
And right now we're just in like the orbit. Right now jiu-jitsu is closer to the sun.
Right.
They're growing. They're getting all the photosynthesis happening.
Right.
And, what I'm trying to do is try to build this ecosystem. And I honestly, for years, man, I tried in the grappling space. That's where everybody knows me from, is pitch and catch wrestling and its relevancy and its canon of knowledge and technique and strategy for grappling and MMA. Like that's been a brand for scientific wrestling. And man, since 2003, when I started the company, I was banging my head against the wall. Nobody wanted to hear it because they just, no, jiu-jitsu.
Jiu-jitsu.
And it's fine. I'm not begrudging you. I'm just telling you, I'm the guy trying to sell you, you know, some older technology that is still kick ass, but there's this new shiny kid on the block and I'm just getting my ass kicked. You know what I mean?
Right.
So eventually I was like, you know, like I did pro wrestling. I did that. I had some success in that. You know, like maybe I need to change my angle here. Maybe instead of trying to bring catch wrestling to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which I've been doing for 20 years, maybe what I need to do is I need to bring actual real grappling that can fucking save your ass for real to pro wrestling. Since I've done that, it's actually been amazing because nobody in pro wrestling is really focused on that market, on that little tiny niche. Now, I've already got from 20 years of banging doors, people know me in the other market pretty well, and I've done these tournaments. And so we've got respect. I mean, I was so honored the BJJ Fanatics asked me if I wanted to do DVDs. I'm like, you talking to me? Okay, yeah, that's fucking amazing, you know?
Yeah.
So I think we've gotten respect through just fucking showing up, dude, not going away, putting on our own tournaments, like trying to be relevant.
Right.
So I always will have that asset, and I'm very honored, and it's just amazing to me that I live this life. You know, like I'm very grateful. I think people that are obsessed on things or get like single-minded have a lot of power. I mean, isn't that what meditation is? Single-minded focus, you know, on one fucking thing. Maybe it's just your breath, or maybe it's on nothing, but it's focus to the exclusion of everything else. And so, you know, I think catch wrestling is interesting in that way. I think that it offers a lot. It offers entertainment. It offers a deep well of knowledge. I don't think it's going away. I don't think it'll go away as long as, I mean, and just like how jiu-jitsu won't go away. Because they're just in the same kind of human nature orbit. I think they're both incredible. So I'm just very blessed that it's relevant in grappling. But pro wrestling is hot for it because they've got the pressure. They've had to book Ronda Rousey. They've had to book Brock Lesnar.
Right.
They've had to put Big Show versus Floyd Mayweather.
Right.
Shine on
also CM Punk.
And CM Punk, right? So you get my point is that pro wrestling, which is making a shit ton of money, creating movie stars, because of the UFC, is in need of legitimacy.
Right.
To keep people buying the fake belts and the t-shirts and the foam fingers and the Hulk Hogan ice cream bars and everything else. I think that is an amazing opportunity because, you know, I came up in pro wrestling when jiu-jitsu was around. Nobody connected the two at all. They were completely different subjects. And now I think the line is getting blurred, and I think pro wrestling is eager for that because they see that there's actual legit interest because the UFC proved it in reality combat.
Right.
Now the UFC has its own set of rules. Guess what? Pro wrestling has its own set of rules. And when pro wrestling is done competitively, it's called catch wrestling.
Catch wrestling. Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, I'm saying that there were definitely rules that were created after it became completely fiction in terms of like John Wick. And so those aren't catch wrestling, but the basics of like winning with a pin, a 3-count pin, typically, which, you know, some people would have a 1-count pin. Some there was 5, some there was 10. It depended. The matches
The
were
basic concept of a win is the same.
The basic concept, yes.
Right.
So, I mean, I'm excited because I think that, you know, pro wrestling is huge and it's an entertainment show. And they've got all kinds of matches. They've got tag team matches. They've got women's matches. They've got hardcore matches where they can hit you with a baseball bat or glass.
Right.
Why doesn't a competitive match just deserve a seat at the table? I'm not saying make the entire WWE competitive. No, I'm just saying, why don't you make like a competitive belt? And
To
so the
just
guys that
to just
actually
show
can
the
wrestle,
legitimacy of the art.
yeah, because the guys who actually can wrestle, like the Dolph Zigglers or these other guys, they can kind of come and go out of that, and they can go back into John Wick land, and then go back, and then you don't have to farm it out to the UFC to create stars for it. I mean,
Right.
I don't know. That's my perspective. So I'm optimistic for the future, but I can guarantee you this: I'll just keep going, man, because this is it's like my life. I'm gonna figure this problem out. That's just what I'm trying to do.
That's a great attitude to end this interview with. So thank you so much, Coach, for like giving me your time and like sharing all your insights and like you know letting us know so much about like the one of the neglected arts in martial arts, which is catch wrestling. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. And
Hey,
like
thank
yeah,
you, Boone. It was very nice to meet you. Thank you.
yeah, it's very nice to meet you too. You're a really great guy. And I have also seen a lot of your videos and like the way you explain, like even the BJJ Fanatics, the tutorial I have bought. I have not like completed that yet. I have just like completed the first video, and like I
There's a
have
lot.
my
There's a
friends come
lot
over.
on each of those, man. I put so much shit on each of those videos. I know there's a lot. They were like, dude, you gotta slow down. I'm like, no, I'm putting everything in this fucking. I'm gonna make it to where I can't fit another fucking thing in the time you give me.
You know what? I had like three of my friends come over to my place, like put all the mats just to do the catch wrestling stuff that you have
Oh,
put on BJJ
oh, cool.
Fanatics. We have it
Nice,
still here in the next room, just
nice.
to train your video,
Ah,
your
that's awesome.
instruction.
That's awesome. Thank you. It's
We
really
were
cool.
doing the cradle, the two different types of cradle chokes, and the one choke where you like kind of it's like a paper, like a bread cutter thing,
Oh yeah.
and we named that as the non-believer choke because one of our friends did not believe its legitimacy, and we just put that on him. you know
Those are fun moments. Yeah.
right, right. And I think my friends would be like very excited to see this interview with you because like we just were like training it like a couple of weeks ago, and we would be resuming training on the same like this week. We still have the mats on just for your BJJ Fanatics,
That's awesome.
instructional.
Well, listen, man, like I said, I did the same thing on the takedowns DVD. It's like they're like, you got 4 hours. I'm like, dude, watch this. And me and Sam did it all in one take too. There was no double, nothing. We just full time and we filmed both the takedowns and submissions back to back. Like we worked 8 hours, just filmed that shit, got back on a plane, headed back home. The Nelson's one is the same deal, man. That's like, I'm hoping for somebody to see these and really go to town with it, man. Like,
Right,
like that's what I'm hoping for.
right, right.
But
So
that's
thank
awesome. I love the fact that you're out there, uh, dude. I mean, honestly, that's like every young grappler's dream is to just clear the shit out of the apartment and have some mats and just not even have to go to the gym,
right, right, right.
especially with your buddies too.
Yeah,
Because then you can talk shit. In the gym, you got to be respectful because there could be a mayor in there, there could be like a cop. You can't get all crazy. But with your buds, you can talk shit and have
yeah.
some fun with it. And that is the spirit of pro wrestling sometimes too.
And you know what's crazier? We all do jujitsu. You know,
That's right. Listen,
so
man, that's
so
the
we
only
three
way that
coming
you
together
deserve
to
that.
train catch means a lot about like the stuff that you have put on BJJ Fanatics. That is really hard stuff, and they are like a lot of stuff that we could like successfully incorporate in our game, and we truly believe it's gonna like enhance our game, and like we're gonna like catapult our jiu-jitsu skills with the catch submissions and the catch concepts of like weight distribution and stuff, like where you put a lot of weight on the diaphragm and like in a very more efficient way. So we are like open-minded, and we are like using your BJJ Fanatics video to understand more about like grappling in a wholesome manner, not just for jiu-jitsu or catch.
Like I said, like, I mean, Dean Lister and Danaher and those guys got really hot on leg locks, man. And just like how the Gracies got really hot on the guard. And just like how Eddie Bravo's got really hot on,
The the,
the
the
truck and the
rubber
twist.
guard and stuff, yeah.
Yeah, and rubber guard. And that's those systems, right?
Hmm.
So, I'm at this stage now. I mean, I'm old, I'm busted up, and I'm still super hot for this shit. I love it. So now I'm just like, taking the data a different way. You know what I mean? So
Right.
I'm like, I'm coaching, I'm still doing research, I'm still trying to like present this, put this in a like a lot of what I do is I systematize things. I'm really good at like kind of classification and then, you know, how do these different pieces, how do they interact and what's the more efficient pathway here? And almost like, you know, network building in a way, like in terms of
Right.
flow charts and shit. And so, you know, that like a lot of the stuff was me just being lucky and being analytically minded and being with guys like Billy Robinson that are real deep thinkers, man, real fucking deep thinkers on this. And I was able to kind of take it out of their head and make it like digestible, understandable. You know,
Yeah.
I don't want to say dumb it down because I don't think in terms of
And that's exactly what I'm trying to do with you, like pick your brain as much as possible, you know,
it's
for
not.
catch
What's
wrestling.
happening is that it's a very technical subject, and to get people to understand a very technical subject, it takes somebody who one really understands the subject matter, but then also understands how to communicate.
How to convey, yeah.
But you know, I think they're intertwined because if it's a complicated concept, you have to understand it from 20 different dimensions, so you can
Right.
explain it in 20 different ways. So in a room of 20 different people, there's different, you know, because different people are going to understand things differently. So,
Right.
you know, like if you look at those DVDs, there's a structure to it. There's like
A
kind of,
pedagogy.
yeah, there it really is. That's really what my imposition, the techniques, the way to put the leverage, a lot of that is stuff that I learned from these old timers that improved my game. Like I just like changed the fucking way I wrestle radically. And I'm just bummed out that I learned it late because I was in my 30s when I really hooked up with Billy. It was like, fuck, man, I would have been awesome to know you in when I was really young, really healthy, and really game, you know. But again, that's just not my path in this. That's why I created the competitions is so that there can be athletes, they can be superstars, you know. But I'm just more like I feel sometimes like Wizard of Oz, like I'm behind the curtain, like trying to make things happen for the show, you know.
Yep. So that's really great, and I'm like really happy for your vision and mission and like what you're doing for the sport.
There's a
And
lot of great people doing stuff out there too. I'm not the only one. I'm just the
yeah,
astronaut that was on the moon first.
yeah, yeah. I mean, like appreciating for you doing your part, right? So I
I'm doing
know,
Snake Pit Japan, where Miyato is. He's doing incredible work. Josh Barnett's doing incredible work.
yeah.
I mean, there's so many
Neil
guys.
Melanson.
Neil Melanson's doing great work. Snake Pit Wiggins doing great work. Like, there's a lot of people.
And Tony, how do you say Kitchen?
Cicchini,
Cicchini.
you know, even Tony, like you know, it's important, and even guys like Matt Fury, it's important that we have all of these guys because, you know, I mean, Matt Fury, as much as guys like Carl and stuff were upset with him, you know, he really did a lot to market the sport and make it relevant to a lot of people at a certain point in time. And Cicchini did a lot to kind of push and offer alternatives and things like that. Now, you know, those were like the old guys, and I, you know, can't say like I just haven't been in touch with them or seen really their work. I do my own thing, but you know, we've just like any business, you know, like you look at like a Bill Gates or you know, it can get ruthless and people can get mean to each other and whatever. And that happens in catch wrestling. It happens in jiu-jitsu. It happens everywhere. But I think it's important just as a human being to try to transcend that kind of shit. You know what I mean? Especially as you get older.
Exactly.
Hopefully you get a little less testosterone and you
Right.
start learning like the importance of like working together.
Imparting your knowledge.
Well, that you can't do everything yourself, that you're not a one-man fucking island, and that it does take a whole lot of people sometimes to make something
Exactly.
amazing happen.
Exactly.
I mean, yeah, and then there's like GoCore, and there's Eric Paulson, and there are just so many really great people out there
Caro
working on.
Parisian, who did great in UFC.
Yeah, so it's, you know, the thing is like any community, it's going to be different. Like it's made up of individuals, But the most important thing is that everybody's trying to row the boat and not poke holes in it, you know?
Right.
So I'm grateful for everybody. Despite what anybody may think, I am grateful because I love this. I love catch wrestling.
Right. And I'm grateful for you, grateful to you for like doing this interview and like imparting so much valuable knowledge and like, insights about catch wrestling and stuff. And I would also like to do a part two, like whenever you want in the future, after like completing your entire set of videos in BJJ Fanatics,
Okay.
like with more
Yeah,
technical stuff.
I mean, I think if you really enjoyed the submissions, I think you really need the takedowns. I think you're gonna enjoy that, especially if you didn't come from a wrestling background.
Right.
I think it'll change the way you wrestle, and you'll not hate takedowns. You'll actually enjoy takedowns. And then when you really are done kind of playing with those concepts, if you go to the Nelson,
The
man,
Nelson.
dude, you'll end up being a Nelson guy. You'll end up like, fuck, dude, these are everywhere. Holy shit. It's like
The game changer.
well, really, because once you get good at like I look at the Nelson now largely because of the help of my friend Jesse, who's on the DVD, as an incredible setup for darces, like just darts, and he actually got the idea from Billy, and we talk about that on that DVD. So like, I'm interested actually to talk to you after you do the takedowns, not even the Nelson. I just want you to figure out the submission, see what works for you, what doesn't, obviously, and then start playing with the takedowns because I think that you will dig that. I think you'll really enjoy it.
Okay, sounds interesting. Okay, I'll like tour through like all of your technical stuff, like whatever you have over there on BGG Fanatics, and would love to do a part two later in the future with more technical questions and like
I'll be here, man. I'm telling you, I'm a nerd, so you're speaking my language. I can bullshit like all night. Although I do have to go because it's almost midnight here. I have no idea. It must be really late there. And I got to get up in the morning, go do my yoga because I've traded in the wrestling mat for the yoga mat now. I'm like, but I'll tell you, it's amazing. It's amazing, especially, being like a wrestling historian, realizing that, all of yoga is derivative of Kushti wrestling exercises, and Dandasana is actually a frozen Dond, you know what I mean? Like the push-up, so anyway, yeah, I do got to go, but tell me how you like it, and I'll be back in a minute. I appreciate your time.
It's great. Thank you so much, and looking forward to more interviews in the future with you and like more knowledge sharing and imparting from you.
Oh, I can just tell you stuff I can just tell you my opinion on things. That's all I'm good for.
Yeah. I appreciate that very much. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Thank you, Varun.
Yeah, thank you.